So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week. So I hope you enjoy this story. So as you listen to this sleep story, just take a moment to get yourself comfortable and close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, I'm going to be talking in the background. And as I talk in the background, so you can comfortably drift off asleep. And while you drift off comfortably asleep, I'll just be telling you a story. Now there was a child sat in his bedroom on a rainy, stormy night, and he has his legs crossed, sitting on his bed, shining a torch down at a book in his hands, hearing the sound of the rain on the window, with darkness outside. And he was reading his favourite book. And as he was reading his favourite book, all about castles, so he began to imagine what it would be like to be living in a castle. And as he imagined this, so his mind wandered. He drifted off into a vivid reverie. And in his mind's eye, he found himself in a castle in the Middle Ages, sitting on his bed with his legs crossed, playing a game on his bed with little wooden toys. And he could notice at the window of his bedroom that it was dark and it was raining outside, and he was sat here in this castle, in this bedroom, on his bed, with the room just lit with a few candles flickering on the table beside him, flickering on a table across the other side of the room, the shadows dancing on the stone walls. And so he stood up on his bed and looked out the window and looked at the rain falling outside. And in the distance, in the rain, he could see the lights of the nearby town. And he was curious what that town would be like, and to go and explore that town in the morning when the rain stops. And so he climbed off his bed, picked up the candle next to his bed, walked across his room to the door, and as he walked he noticed the way shadows dance on the walls. He could smell the smell of the candle as the flame flickered, and the soft sound of his footsteps on the rug on the floor. And he could feel that rug tickling between his toes, feeling how soft that rug feels. And he slid on some slippers, walked over to the door, undid the latch on the door and pushed the heavy wooden door open. and walked out into the corridor. And out in the corridor, he could instantly notice the sound was different. The way the footsteps echoed in this corridor, around the stone walls and the stone floor. And as he walked out into the corridor and started walking along the corridor was only lit by the light of his candle that he was holding. And he took the flickering shadows with him. And he could see some light from some of the windows, where some light from outside was streaming in at points along this corridor. There were also other rooms off the corridor, bedrooms and other rooms. And he walked along the echoing corridor. He could see the way the light from outside shimmered on paintings on the walls, and the way the light danced in the raindrops that were hitting the windows, and the sound of that rain against the glass, and the diamond patterns from the windows on the walls, and at the end of the corridor. The boy descended a spiral staircase. He descended those stone steps, and as he descended, so he could notice there was a warm glow that he was descending into. And whereas the corridor he was coming from was a little chilly, where he was descending to felt warmer and cozy. And he reached the foot of the staircase and noticed the most beautiful room, with ornate, beautiful rugs on the floor. He walked across the room. He could hear a crackling fire across the room. He walked towards that fire and felt the warmth in this room, the comfy glow of the light in this room. And he could just faintly hear the sound of the rain outside. And he sat in one of the comfy chairs near the fire, picked up a book from the table near the chair, and was somehow able to read the text in this book, and started to read the text in the book and look at the pictures in the book. And this boy was fascinated by the feel of the book, the weight of the book, the feel of the cover of the book, the slightly rough feel of each page. And when he ran his fingers down the page, he could feel the text on the page. And he could hear the sounds of the way the pages turned, and that reading this book felt different to reading normal books that he was used to reading. The paper felt different and smelt different. The pages turned differently. The text looked different and felt different to the touch. Almost like it had been written into the book. And the way the book was bound felt very different. And in the background he could hear that crackling fire. And feel the comfortable warmth in this room. And he put the book down, back on the table, curled himself up and snuggled up in the chair. Made sure his candle was safely blown out. And closed his eyes and relaxed and drifted comfortably asleep. And then in the morning the boy awoke, feeling refreshed and alert in that chair. He got out of the chair, went back up to his room. He could notice that the rain had cleared. There was blue sky outside. He opened his window in the room, could feel that fresh air and smell that fresh air, feeling the breeze on his skin. Inhaling that air, feeling the air pass in through his nose, down into his lungs, almost like it was circulating, that he could feel it circulating through his body, feeling so refreshed and full of energy. And the boy got dressed, ran back down that corridor, back down the stairs, down to that room. And he found his way out of the castle to go exploring. And he left the castle, crossed the castle grounds, the most beautiful gardens he'd ever seen, with perfectly symmetrical and manicured hedges, beautiful coloured plants, sounds of birds, the slight breeze on his face as he ran across the garden, all the way to the exit of the castle grounds. And he crossed a drawbridge out of the castle grounds. I could see below him the town the castle overlooks. And he ran down into that town and could see people all up for the day, setting up their shops and businesses. He could hear the clip-clop of horses, sounds of people talking with each other and laughing, sounds of children playing, sounds of squelching mud, sounds of farmyard animals. And he turned down a street that looked like a market. with all sorts of people selling all sorts of things, and he passed them all by to go exploring. He could see that beyond the town is some woodland. He could see a river heading across farmland and into the woods. And he could see above the tree line a grey stone building, and he was curious what that building was. So he ran through the town, followed the road round and down towards the woodland, jumped over a fence and ran towards the river, and decided that he would follow that river into the woodland. And he walked along the riverbank, and he could hear the sound of that water flowing alongside him in the opposite direction to the one he was walking. He could see sticks and leaves and other bits and pieces floating past him, obviously washed into the river from the rain overnight. And ducks swimming as a family along that river, quacking, and little curious ducklings investigating different bits and pieces along the shoreline, and then having to hurry to catch up with their mum, while the mum keeps having to stop and keep an eye on them. And he carries on walking, almost like a skip with excitement, along the edge of the river. He could see the occasional wispy cloud in the sky, just drifting and floating by. As he entered the woodland, being aware that the temperature changed slightly, as he felt a sense of excitement and curiosity, could hear the rustling leaves, feel the bark of the trees as he walked past, hearing the change to the sound of his footsteps on the slightly damp mud as he continued following that river deeper and deeper into the woods. And after a while of walking deeper and deeper into the woods, noticing how there were different sounds of different birds, he stopped for a moment to catch his breath, to take in his environment. He'd always been taught that the journey is part of the fun of going anywhere. He remembered being told by his grandparents that a holiday begins when you set off. It doesn't begin when you arrive at your destination. That the journey is part of the holiday. And so it's best to enjoy the journey. And he sat there for a little while, with his back against a tree trunk, gazing up toward the sky, noticing the way the sunlight danced in the leaves, the way the sun glistened on the water of the river, and the drops on the grass twinkled as the grass moved in the breeze. And then, after a little rest, the boy continued following that river. And he could see the tall tower he was searching for. He could see he was getting closer. Then he exited the woods, carrying on following the river. And he could see a building, a tall building with grey bricks. And it had a water wheel in the river. And as the water went past, it turned that wheel, and it was at a point where there was a bit of a waterfall. Where this calm river that this boy had been used to, walking along next to, was approaching the more rapid part of the river. He walked to that building, climbed up the steps, knocked on the door. And after a few moments, he could hear movement from inside and sound of someone mumbling, and then clattering, and then walking towards the door. And they opened the door, and he saw this man dressed in purple. And he was curious about this man, and this man enthusiastically invited him in. And so he followed the man into this building. And just inside the building, he realized this was a vast library. There were tens of thousands of books probably, all over the walls, as high as he could see, all the way up inside the building. And there were what looked like ordinary lights in this building. And the boy was curious about this, and wanted to ask this man so many questions. He asked the man whether they were lights like you get everywhere else. And the man explained that the wheel turning outside is what makes these lights work. And the boy thought to himself, it sounds like electricity to me. But this man didn't use those terms. And the boy asked him about all the books, whether he'd read them. And the man said he'd been here hundreds and hundreds of years, and that he'd read every single book, and that he's a guardian of knowledge, that his role is to gain the knowledge through the ages of humanity, and to store what knowledge he can in these books, and to read and remember as much knowledge as he can, and that through all of the centuries his role has been to gain that knowledge, to make sure that humankind doesn't lose knowledge of the ages and can learn from the past and create a brighter future. And the man said that about 2,000 years earlier, he was one of the last people to leave the library at Alexandria. That there's a number of people like him who were blessed with the gift of extended life, who left Alexandria with knowledge of its time, with all the knowledge from the library. And they all set up new places, gathering new knowledge, to continue what that library had started, to document knowledge of humanity. And their role is not to interfere, just to observe people, just to watch people at a distance in a non-judgmental way, to record knowledge of observations, and to travel around and seek out new knowledge, and take that new knowledge back here and store it for future generations. And that one day the time will come where someone will grow up and be destined to take over his job, and that the knowledge keeper is blessed with a long life, for as long as they're destined to be the knowledge keeper, and that things go deeper than most people realize and understand, that this knowledge goes back thousands and thousands of years, that the library at Alexandria wasn't the first library, wasn't the first collection of mankind's knowledge, that going back thousands and thousands of years, there was an ancient civilization, and that ancient civilization encountered a civilization from outside the planet, and that civilization from outside the planet told the ancient civilization here on Earth that a time will come when they'll be ready to interact with each other, to access universal knowledge, to find out what other species across the galaxy are aware of. But for now, humanity is only beginning its journey, and that these libraries are to be beacons, that the books stored here, the knowledge stored in all these libraries are designed in such a way that they act like beacons beaming out that knowledge into space from various places on the planet. And when one beacon goes down, as time takes its toll, another beacon is created in its place. And when the other races around the galaxy detect that beacon, detect that the beacon is communicating that humanity is now ready, the knowledge is at a level that it's ready to expand and learn more. Only then will aliens arrive to help humanity find its next steps and take one giant leap into a whole new existence. And all these beacons operate by sending out signals across a different aspect of space-time, that all of the beacons are quantum entangled with a system that the various alien races use. And when things shift on Earth, that quantum entanglement instantly gives a signal in all of the locations across the galaxy that Earth is now ready. And the boy thought to himself, this is the kind of job I want to do. And after learning some more, he left that library. He followed that river back into the woods, through the woods, back out up towards that town. He walked through the town, admiring the way the sun was setting over the back of the houses. He went back to that castle and up to his bedroom. He got into bed and drifted comfortably asleep, and as he did, the boy began to come out of his reverie, sitting on his bed, and was aware the rain had stopped. And had this sense of motivation, of purpose, a sense of meaning, of something he knew he really wanted to do. And he knew that he was going to gain more knowledge, and that he was going to be one of these people who gathers the knowledge of humanity and helps to prepare humanity for its next stage in its journey to the future. He knew he was going to find a library that he could take great joy in studying all the books and works in the library, and devouring all the knowledge he could find. And he had this intuitive sense that maybe that reverie connected with something deeper, more profound, about knowledge and wisdom, about the past, present and future. And so he turned off the light in his bedroom, rested back in bed, and with pleasant thoughts in his mind, he drifted and dreamed comfortably, relaxed, asleep.